Can you say friends, talking, nerdy? Close enough.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
Welcome to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and joining me all the way in New Hampshire with a rambunctious 2-year-old running around the house, we have the Reverend Tracy. How you doing?
It is good. It is definitely my life is one with a toddler in it, and we are not going to pretend that he doesn't exist. I know Tim and I had talked a big game about, utilizing the Mr. Reverend's current time off, which we can touch on later now that I think about it. There's a topic that's topicable. Discussing ahead of the show what we'd talk about. We could talk about that, Tim. But he's around more, and we had totally discussed him watching the baby Reverend, and trying to prioritize some of these. But you know what? It's just been beautiful having the dad around, the Mr. Reverend getting to have essentially the paternity leave he should have gotten when the child was born, and Tim's been awesome. And it's like, hey, sorry, we're not going to record because it's beautiful outside and we want family time. So it's been really nice, though. So if he chimes in the background, we're going to do our best around it. But he is definitely very curious as he slowly creeps up on my left so that he can stare at Tim sometimes and smile. So
Yeah, there will be tons of laughter, let's put it that way.
yes, we will do our best in future. We're going to look into it. If it's disruptive, of course, let us know the feedback-wise, but we're just going to do our best to just be realistic. But yeah, so that's the brief end of life as he slams a gate. I don't know if that came through or not, but yay.
Well, that future Tim, the editor, will find out. But I know one thing that you do on a regular basis now with the young one is watch a lot of kids' TV, including a show about a blue Australian dog.
Yes, I probably to nobody's surprise with some of the stuff I've talked about, how it is important what we feed our brains, that I am quite particular about what I expose the baby Reverend to. And what's funny is I've had friends surprised, like, oh my God, they got a tablet for that baby. I'm just so shocked, like grasping their pearls at the fact that I was playing Bluey before he was 18 months old because for some reason we decided that was some magical time. But yeah, as far as if I was going to play something around him before that magic age of the 18 months to 2 years, again, for whatever reason, we've decided that's when it's okay to introduce screen time. Don't fully get it. Yeah, I was very particular about it, and Bluey was an early one. And what's nice is I found I enjoyed it. And even to the tune of the Mr. Reverend ending up catching a few episodes and maybe shedding a tear during a very iconic one that aired that we can go into if it brings it up. But yeah, Bluey definitely was a quick one for me, like super early on, because especially whenever I was still on maternity leave and just sitting there, the place we were renting actually had Disney and cable. Oh my gosh, I had access to cable for the first time. Like, I couldn't tell you how many years. It felt very much like I'd gone back in time. And so that was really what got Bluey in our home, was because that's what Disney played in the morning. And flipping through and me just not really caring about the 10 different news shows talking about the five same things, kind of wound up on there.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head. I know when my kids were the baby Reverend's age, I feel it is important for parents to pick entertainment for their kids that they can tolerate as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because you are going to be in the room a lot of times with that entertainment, and the kids are going to be wanting to get you involved with that entertainment as well if it's something that bowls them over. So, because I just have too many. I probably have to throw out a mental health term, PTSD from the Wiggles, and I only saw that a couple of times before I said no more, no more. It's over.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I've got a lot of my humble opinions on it. right? Because there's some things like, do I want to listen to Miss Rachel sing the Itsy Bitsy Spider like anymore in my life? No. But at the same time, if that's what's engaging him to have interest in learning like the little hand signals, because that all means something for his development, okay, I guess I can get up and pantomime Itsy Bitsy Spider with Miss Rachel and Emma Memma from the Wiggles, by the way, because that is still a thing.
Oh God.
But she's really cutesy. I dig her as far as like a character. But sometimes you just got to pick what's better for the kiddo. And ultimately, I realized, and this is kind of different than when you were raising littles, right? Like nowadays, we're even more empowered. We have our phone. They don't have that. We have our headphones. They don't have that. So sure, if my projector, super low blue light emission, by the way, for anybody concerned about that for your kids, typically has stuff for him on it. Yes, has there been days where the Mr. Reverend wanted to go insane? Absolutely. But then I just reminded him he's got headphones and he can close himself in the office.
Oh, that is the amazing thing, because back in my day, with my little ones, you were stuck at the teat of what cable or regular TV had to offer you. I mean, now granted, PBS Kids and the Nick Jr. Lineup, great stuff for kids. That is not the Wiggles. Disney did have some good stuff too. I'm not going to throw Disney completely into the bus or anything.
Sesame
like that,
Street, right? Because that's been
Sesame
around
Street.
for ages, right?
on PBS Kids, but thanks to modern streaming options, even though that they were initially on HBO Max, their contract expired, and now Sesame Street is moving to Netflix.
Oh, I was curious because we had started some of that, and that's where I was like, hey, did you know Oscar used to be orange or whatever? Was that it? Am I saying that right? Because
Yep,
Oscar was a totally different color, right? Okay.
Oscar the Grouch, yeah.
Yeah, like I hadn't seen any of the old Sesame Street. Like I couldn't tell you the last time I watched Sesame Street, other than very recently with the tiny sir, the tiny sir, the baby Reverend.
Oh man, my youngest loved Elmo, and it was funny because the Elmo puppet had actually been around for a long time, but the voice for the Elmo puppet and what became Elmo ended up happening later. So there are videos from like the 80s to where the Elmo puppet's there, but has a deep, gravelly voice. And I blew my kid's mind when I showed that, and he was like, "That's not Elmo. That's not Elmo." He got upset.
Yeah, because original Elmo's kind of a creepy looking little fucker. Like it's, I think they said his name, and I went, no, Elmo is new, and no, sure enough, yeah, it's like totally different. But it's not the little red cute guy with the big red bobbly eyes.
No,
He kind of
it
went
was
through a
the same
transition,
puppet.
right?
Nope, it was the same puppet. But the guy who ended up voicing Elmo that we know today ended up joining the Children's Television Workshop at a later time and then gravitated towards that puppet that had been used before. So it was the same puppet, looked the exact same, but before the guy who first became Elmo, I forgot his name, Kevin something, I believe, he had a much different gravelly voice.
Gotcha. I think I'm just getting it confused with the Oscar the Grouch then or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, there had been definitely some changes, but since we're going to be talking about Bluey here, what do you think attracted you to Bluey? Was it just the baby Reverend's interest in it, or what made it to where this is required viewing in the home?
So what's funny is I first learned about Bluey well before the baby Reverend was even a twinkle in our eye. I first learned about Bluey on NPR. NPR had spotlighted the show that was suddenly grabbing a lot of Americans' attention, right? And particularly the episode they chose to talk about because it had caused some conflict is the one about, I think it's called Copycat is the name of the episode. But ultimately what goes on in the episode is Bluey and her dad, because Bluey is a little girl. A lot of people have been confused about that because she is blue and the dad bandit is blue. They thought that correlated gender. It does not. Both of the little dogs in Bluey are girls. They're sisters. So Bluey is out with her dad and they're playing. She's copying everything he does and kind of giving him a hard time. And they come across a baby budgie bird that had seemed like it maybe got attacked by a cat or something and it was hurt. And so they go and get a box. Bluey goes and, tries to pick a dish towel and they take it to the vet. And the thing that really shocked and even upset some parents, the budgie dies. And so, they're sitting in the waiting room. They're saying, hey, I hope it's okay. And then, oh, I'm so sorry to tell you the little budgie didn't make it. And so the episode then goes into her reenacting the situation. And it's kind of showing and unpacking how kids will do that. Like Bluey wanted to reenact finding the baby bird with her baby sister. And we're playing this in the yard. And the baby budgie's like, the mom comes out and she's pretending to be the vet and says, oh, the budgie made it. And Bluey goes, no, actually the budgie dies. So she didn't choose to change how it happened. She used the play to process what happened. And then what's funny is Bingo, who was the budgie, comes alive and then oh, okay, well, that's out of our control, right? Basically that was the whole thing of the episode is that kind of goes over kid processing. But it was super funny because parents were upset that the budgie died. And they had a kid processing that bad things happen because a lot of our cartoons don't do that. They pull away from that. They kind of, if anything, they deal with any tragedy like that through a degree of separation, right? And this felt very direct. And it was great because a lot of American parents really didn't seem to know how to take that. At least that's what I remember, because that's what that story on NPR was about all those years ago. So, of course, I went, oh, that sounds like a cool show. That sounds like the kind of show kids need to be watching. And then fast forward, lo and behold, I still feel the same way about it. This is now seasons into it. So, and they've done so much cool topics and covering of things in that show that I cannot help but appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about my love for Mr. Rogers in the past many times on the show, and I know on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, within the first couple of weeks of episodes of that show when it first started, they tackled assassination. Because I believe within the first couple of weeks was when Robert Kennedy was assassinated in '68, and he just opened up and talked about it. Now, granted, in a way to where he was able to properly communicate with kids, but he showed even back in the day that kids can and are willing to hear about these really hard topics. Sesame Street did it as well. I think it was Mr. Hooper ended up dying, and they actually just talked about it. Kids can process this stuff if you talk about it in a way that they can understand.
Exactly. And a lot of this is based off of the writer Brun, I think it is his name. You guys know how I'm shit with names. We're used to it at this point on this show. I know I haven't been on as much lately, but that has not changed, folks. So the creator, it's really based off of him raising his daughters. And it's really interesting to me, and this is before we go into any of the bullet points we have up, how often they touch on serious stuff and even kind of funny stuff in the background, right? Because there's this whole thing with Chili's sister apparently stopped hanging out with them because she was struggling with infertility. Now, do they lay it out that clearly? No, but they do kind of cover that sometimes things can be complicated, right? And it's not necessarily personal that the aunt wasn't hanging out with them. So I love how they found ways to touch on that. So yeah, I think this is a show that's speaking to a generation. A lot of millennials have even used it to kind of reparent themselves. So I'm kind of super curious to see what else the internet has had to say about Bluey, because I know my experience with it has been insanely positive.
Yeah, when as mentioned, we do have some bullet points we are going to be going over. One last thing, I believe this show too has a intentional color scheme because they also want dogs to watch.
I'm pretty sure that's a myth, and I'm going to double check that because I thought that was cute when I heard it, and I was like, no, I think it was just chance. But I did remember that circulating because I'm in not a lot. I'm in a few adult Bluey fan groups because I think some of the memes, and they're not all wholesome, by the way. There's one called Hammer Barn Posting, and they're pretty much all fucking Hawk to a girl jokes for hitting that for a minute. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that turned out to be a myth. I want to say it was.
Okay. Another one of my trusted trivia tidbits that mean shit. Anyway, Well, we do have some bullet points here. I forgot the article that we pulled it from, but future Tim will find that and put it in the show notes so you can all read the article as well. But how about I dive into the first point and we start the discussion?
Go for it.
All right. The parents on Bluey actually enjoy their children. This may seem like a small thing, but it's huge. The Healer family generally enjoys spending time together. Bandit and Chili aren't just there to keep their kids in line. They actively engage with them, laugh with them, and let the kids take the lead in play activities. The result is a family dynamic that feels joyful and real. Unlike many kids shows that either make parents the butt of the joke or remove them altogether, Bluey embraces family relationships. Bluey refreshingly navigates parenting and marriage, avoiding cliches like the clueless dad or the overbearing mom. The relatability of the plots and characters also encourages parents to watch alongside their children, an activity that enables children to engage more deeply and learn more from what they see. I've only seen one episode of Bluey. It was the research I did for this episode here, the Magic Xylophone episode. And I will have to say, just from that one episode, I can agree with this bullet point here because it did show the parents, as mentioned, actively engaged in the kids' lives. It didn't use the stereotypes. It is kind of sickening how much stereotypes when it comes to parenting we see in kids shows. The overbearing dad, you can't do this, you can't do that. The overbearing mother, the dumb dad. Because, what do dads know, right? They really don't contribute much to anything, do they? Ha ha ha.
Right. Meanwhile, Bandit is an incredibly involved dad, and they actually really do play with their kids. And I know sometimes there's adults that get a little, oh, this is unrealistic. You can't play every day. However, this show isn't existing every day. This is showing you a day in the life of. It was never meant to imply that they're constantly playing with the kids. And there are times that Bandit says, hey, no, really, I have to work right now. Hey, no, really, I have to go right now. And like setting some of those boundaries too. But yeah, like being involved and being that person that plays with your kid is really important. And I think the little side note is not only is this not putting parents in that role so that we're passively teaching kids that parents, I don't know, suck. I don't know. I just think if you're only around to like and rules and enforce, like that sucks. Who likes that boss? Meanwhile, the boss in life that actually gets involved with people is way more fun. So in a way, I think it almost reminds parents like you can be part of the play too. Right? Like you don't have to just be an enforcer. You don't have to just be this. Like remember, you can play too. But yeah, some of our favorite games with the baby Reverend are kind of how we've altered it so that it works for us. For example, baby Reverend wants to play with all these tiles. Well, we've learned that we can make towers and then he can knock them down. Or if the baby Reverend wants to run back and forth and we really don't have the energy because the Mr. Reverend and I went on a 5K that day, because we still try to run in our spare time, well, then we're going to play our fun little version of hide and seek where he thinks for some reason his job is to come out when we say ready or not, here I come. It's finding those ways to still play with your kid because that is so insanely important for their development and their relationship with you.
And something that I think is kind of easy, unfortunately, for parents to fall into that trap of not really involving themselves in their kids' play because you're so focused as a parent, especially a younger parent, of, keeping the lights on, getting food in the house, doing this, doing that, that you don't often take the time to just say, let's play a goofy game. Let's do the magic xylophone thing. Like, I didn't get the impression that the xylophone itself was truly magical. I thought the father was just kind of playing along and acting like it was magical and all that.
Exactly. And that's something I really appreciate about that world is it's not a magic world. The most magical thing about it is it's dogs that are talking and not people. Right? Everything there is very much grounded in like reality and playing. And therefore it's almost showing you like realistically playing with your kids in that sense. Like it can be as simple as, can you take a break so that they can play like a freeze game with you with a xylophone? Granted, got to give it to Bandit for the commit. I would not have allowed the fountain in my face at the end. That would have been my like no-go. But it's great because I was about to step into something else, but I realized number 2 actually covers what I wanted to say next. So we can go into that if you're ready.
Dive into it.
So number 2, Bluey normalizes the challenges of parenting. Raising kids is wonderful, but it's also exhausting, messy, and full of moments where you wonder if you're doing it right. Bluey gets that. Bandit and Chili aren't perfect parents, as mine screams to go outside right now, but they're trying. And that's what makes them so relatable. An omelet, Chili rushes to make Father's Day breakfast for Bandit, but Bingo wants to help. Initially frustrated, Chili realizes that letting Bingo help is more important than the broken eggs and spilled milk. In Baby Race, Chili shares her experience of feeling inadequate when other babies learn to walk before Bluey, an example of the self-doubt and anxiety over developmental milestones that so many parents experience. The show even tackles tougher topics like grief, infertility, and changing family dynamics in age-appropriate and sensitive ways that resonate with parents and can facilitate later parent-child discussions. And that episode, Omelet, and part of that realistic parenting at the beginning that we were talking about, sometimes play really is doing daily functions. I can't tell you how many times our playtime with me and the baby Reverend is we're making chia jam. Hey, we're making daddy's overnight oats, so you're about to measure and mix and do like kind of messy stuff, you know? So there's some of that too to throw in up there. But Omelet was super funny because sometimes you just want something to get done and your kiddo has other plans for how to do it because they really do want to help. And that even goes back to if you can somehow make making an omelet fun for them, you're teaching them a life skill, you're bonding, and it still counts as playing, guys. It counts as kind of that same thing. You're doing something together. And then, yeah, I was the other one, Baby Race. Oh my God, Baby Race is a popular one for episodes that made adults cry because of just, yeah, there's this whole moment at the end where, you know, Chili is beating up on herself because the other kiddo was walking before Bluey. And basically what it was is it felt like, you know, Bluey was going to do great because Bluey sat up. Oh, yes, Bluey did set up so early. And Chili even talks about how it made her into a bragger. So then she had all of this expectation for Bluey to like walk before everybody too, since, you know, she just sat up like nothing. And I totally relate to that with this guy. Granted, so far, yeah, he's knocked a lot of those out of the park, but I've tried to maintain that realistic mentality of like, but it's not going to be like that for everything. Right? Like your kiddo is going to like sometimes pick up really fast and then other things are going to go slower, but that's okay. It's in a range, right? But she takes it really hard, stops going to the parenting group. Like they're kind of showing that she's going through depression. Bandit had walked up like, "Hey, are you going today?" And she's just like sitting, shoulders slumped, not playing with Bluey, not doing anything. I'm like, ooh, that was such like a nice way to depict that, like going through like a depression, like on some of this stuff, but not saying Chili's depressed. Like they didn't have to narrate it. Mm-hmm. And then it took another mom coming up and realizing Chili hasn't come to group. And she goes and visits her and sits on the stoop with her and gives her a little note, like, or shows her a picture of all of her kids. It's like, oh, I thought the kid that was in the group with me was your first. Like, oh, no, I've got 7 kids or something like that. And I needed to come here to tell you something. You're doing great. And that's the line that has made so many people cry. Because sometimes you just need to hear that you are doing great. Oh, no, those 2 episodes were both great.
Yeah, I mean, it is very much possible for parents to think that everything they're doing is wrong at some point, because it's one of those situations where it does not matter how much you prepare, whether it's you don't prepare much like I did, or on the flip side, you'd read all the books, you ultimately prepare for that particular point. You're still not going to be fully prepared for everything that comes your way, and you're going to find yourself in bouts of depression for little things along the way. And it's important to remember that you're a parent. You will make mistakes, and you have to own and accept that and move on. You're not going to make every single right decision for your child. You will make a decision that is bad at times, and you got to live with that, and you got to move on, and because that shows the kid too, I think also embracing that will show the kid the importance of understanding that life happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, I think I rambled enough.
All right. Well, let me dive into the next point here. Bluey models the power of good enough parenting. There's a lot of pressure on parents to be perfect, to always be patient, always make the right call, and always have their act together. Bluey gently pushes back against that expectation. Bandit and Chili show that you don't always have to get it right to be a great parent. They're warm and responsive, but they also get tired, lose their patience, and make mistakes, and that's okay. The idea of good enough parenting, introduced by psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott, argues that kids don't need perfection. They need parents who are attuned to their needs. In Sticky Gecko, Chili gets frustrated when Bluey makes them late for a play date until she recognizes that Bluey is nervous about seeing her old friend. It's a small moment that captures how parenting is often about learning as you go. Again, kind of piggybacking off the comment I just made, yeah, it is important for parents to hear that lesson and hear it again and again and again for that reminder, because it is easy to fall into that habit of, I made a mistake, I've doomed my child to be a Republican, or something. I don't know.
Well, and what's funny is that episode Sticky Gecko. Hold on, why are we just blaming Bluey for that? Because Bingo was just as bad in contributing. The Sticky Gecko that they're referring to is the Sticky Gecko that Bingo threw up onto the ceiling and wanted Chili to catch it, while Chili's like, "Did you clean your teeth?" "Yes." "Let me smell." "When did you clean your teeth?" "Last night," So that was like the interaction between her and Bingo. But yeah, that was a really good one, because what's funny is if Chili had not gotten to the point of frustration where it was, whoo, and like zoomed in on her face and she went, "That's it. That's it. We're not going. We're never leaving the house again." She said that out loud. Now, could you imagine with the wrong tone how that could come off to a kid and how easy it is to kind of lose your cool, right? And what I like, the good enough parenting to me is kind of goes a little hand in hand with some of the positive parenting that I know is like kind of been misappropriated a little bit with some of the meme sharing and isn't necessarily being done correctly all the time. But a lot of the positive parenting is kind of that not demanding perfection from yourself, right? And also showing kids what to do when you lose your cool like that. Right? Like sometimes it is taking the breath and apologizing for snapping, right? And this even, I think, shows where that can come in handy, because it kind of took Chili hitting that breaking point of frustration for them to even get to the fact that Bluey was also nervous. And then to get to the fact to them to relate, because even Bluey started to understand, wait, Mom, you're nervous too? Because this kid's parent is very much about punctuality and being proper, and being late can be rude. And so you've got this pressure for this person that you're nervous about seeing again too. And I thought it was cute how they showed that conversation happen, right? Because they're not spelling it out quite as much as I am. But if you watch that back and forth, that is what those two are saying to each other, is that they were both nervous about leaving. And then the super funny moment happens when she gets a text from the mom saying they're running late. So all of that for nothing. For another parent that might have been dealing with a sticky gecko and trying to get a kid to clean their teeth and get ready and get out the door, right? Because we almost feel like we're the only parent that struggles with that stuff. Even though going to any parenting group page will show you we all kind of struggle with that stuff. But it's funny how you almost get into a vacuum in your head and think it's just you that is fucking up all the time, right? It's only you that is late and being inconsiderate to everybody else in the world.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, also too, like, let's take older kids, for example. Like, I think, if you have older kids whose parents have like split via divorce or something like that, it is very much healthy for those kids to see their parent kind of move on in terms of, dating other people or getting into a new relationship, because it can show them that even though breakups can be hard and sad and all that stuff, that it is possible to move on. And I think, kind of tying back into this here, if you make a mistake as a parent, but you're able to actually talk it out with your kid and apologize to them, that is a big, big learning lesson. And the baby Reverend agrees.
Yes, the baby Reverend does agree. Like, yes, my mother, the Reverend Tracy, the Reverend Z, whatever you want to call me these days, um, has lost their shit. Oh my God, I'm not perfect, guys. There was one time, and I still hate that I did it out of frustration. Ah! Out of frustration, I threw one of his toys. I did it. I threw it, I hit the wall with a big old black mark. And then what was funny was I had to eventually shamefully confess to the Mr. Reverend that it was me when he said, "Yeah, see, buddy, you can't throw things because, like, right there, you left this mark on the wall." I was like, actually, that was me. I was not having a good day that day. I felt terrible about it. Granted, it was nowhere near the kiddo, and I was trying to hyperbolically tell him to stop throwing things, which is such a stupid way to show it. Hey, don't do this while I do it right in front of you, right? Like, it made no sense, but that's like what happens when you kind of get too into you're just riding your emotions and not taking that second to regulate, right? Which is great because that even goes into point number
Good explanation.
4.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, and I love this. Is like, I'm so glad I landed on this point because this is one of my favorite moments, and they missed a part. So, Bluey encourages emotional regulation and boundary setting. Big feelings are okay. Little throw out for my Miss Rachel friends out there. Big feelings are a large part of childhood. And Bluey does a brilliant job of modeling how kids and parents can navigate them. In Yoga Ball, Chili teaches Bingo how to use her big girl bark when Bandit's play is too rough. Developing assertiveness is one of the key skills in establishing healthy boundaries and relationships. Yeah, outside. The show, Bingo thinks she's spoiled Mother's Day. Chili draws on her own past disappointment to acknowledge Bingo's feelings and share her checklist for moving on. I have a little cry. I pick myself up. I dust myself off. I keep going. It's a perfect example of how Bluey helps kids recognize emotions, process them, and move forward, and gives parents tools that are accessible and meaningful to support emotional regulation and resilience. Now, the one thing that was awesome about that, the first I have a little cry, then I pick myself up, dust myself off, and keep going. And Bingo says, I only know how to do the crying part. And Chili says the most beautiful thing, then let's start there. And just lets her. Like, that's okay. Like that it is okay if you can't move through all of the things. Let's just recognize that it's okay to have the big feelings, though. Let's start there.
Emotional regulation is definitely important. I think, sometimes parents can fall into the trap of wanting their kids to be puppets. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with the loud emotional outburst. They just say stop it without trying to dive a little deeper as to why it's happening. It doesn't excuse bad behavior by any means, but if more parents did take the time to find out why something is happening, then maybe they can do a lot better job of helping their kids kind of work through it better. Because
Right.
when you are that young, you're experiencing these emotions for the very first time a lot of times, and think about it. I mean, I think about back when I was a teenager, just a teenager, dealing with stuff coming my way for the first time, and how it can easily overwhelm you. And my parents weren't qualified or anything in terms of teaching me the important stuff about how to deal with that type of stuff. But it is important for parents to take that extra time. It is too easy for a parent just to say stop, but
Right.
why are they doing this? Dive a little deeper and try and give them some tools, because the tools here, as we can see, at least for the instance as experienced in this episode, are accessible. They're kind of easy if you think about it.
Well, and it's funny how much adults seem to have this weird expectation for their kids to emotionally regulate better than them. Because I don't know if half of y'all have seen how y'all act when you don't get your nugget order, or your coffee drink comes back wrong, or God forbid somebody's not going as fast as you think they should be going in traffic. A lot of us don't have a good grip on that, right? And so, like, it's funny that we have this expectation for them to be better when I preface, like, I don't think it's bad behavior at this age. I think it's learning behavior, right? Like, I don't think kids are acting bad. They don't know enough to act bad at this age. They're learning what those mean. They're learning, if I do this thing, what does it get me or what does it not get me, right? It's all testing at this age. It's super developmentally appropriate. It's like whenever this kiddo gets closer to 3, he is probably going to hit the mine phase, no matter how much I try to, but that's developmentally appropriate. They've learned a word that stands for a thing, and they're trying to figure out what ownership even is. So, like, to expect a kid to not be bratty and selfish and to not go mine to things, you are you picked the wrong thing to do. Like, maybe raising a kiddo not on that level, or like, we should have maybe done a little bit more expectation management and research before going into having kids, because they're going to challenge you. That is a function. It's all developmentally appropriate for them.
Yeah, and if you think the challenging is bad at age 2 or 3, wait till 13.
Don't forget, I have a 14-year-old bonus baby, which I don't even really like calling them a baby anymore, because I feel like that, could be taken poorly if they ever decide to listen to this show. But, we've definitely hit some of that stuff, and we've told them point blank that this is a time that it's totally natural for us to be butting heads in this way. And it's funny how much even that diffuses it. Just saying, hey, like, what you're going through is actually normal. And I know, like, a lot of what I've said to help diffuse some things is like, hey, don't you think that the person who's been through stuff before should share information while you're going through it? Like, do we see how that could be helpful?
Right.
Hi, he closed the door.
I'll be totally fine over here, Ma.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I could just close you in the office and just be loose in the house without supervision. That's great.
Yeah, glass breaking and all that stuff. But anyway, how about I dive into the next bullet point here?
Yeah, number 5.
All right. Bluey highlights the power of imaginative play. Few shows capture the magic of childhood make-believe as well as Bluey does. Whether Bluey and Bingo have a pretend taxi service, turn their backyard into a hospital, or play grannies, they continually model perspective-taking, a skill essential to emotional intelligence and relationship building. When Bandit and Chili join the girls in imaginary play, they accept the rules no matter how silly. In Magic Xylophone, an episode I've seen, Bluey and Bingo freeze Bandit and move him into embarrassing positions. Parental participation like this makes play more fun and strengthens their parent-child bond. Imaginative play also supports cognitive development and emotional intelligence, making it a valuable learning experience. Very important stuff. What I did like about the Magic Xylophone episode, at first I was wondering if, we were dealing with an actual quote unquote magic xylophone, but it became pretty clear pretty fast that it was not, that it was just the parent playing along, even though his acting skills were good, because he did the whole freeze thing and then he unfroze, like, what are you doing? How dare you freeze me? Type of deal. And then moved on. But the play for kids helps them kind of process life too, and being able to help participate in that kind of helps give them extra tools that they may not necessarily get if they're just doing this stuff alone. So it's
Exactly.
definitely important.
Oh, yeah. And then another one that was super good was fairies. And it's funny because, again, I've been in some of the parent discussions about some of these, and this was one I was like, well, Bingo should have left him alone the first time. Yeah, it's like, yeah, but Bingo's little. Like, you got to remember, and they do kind of do those little things where they remind you how old they're only like 4 or 5 or whatever at the time, right? And there's this episode where he's doing a work conversation. Because, funny side note, if you didn't know this, Bandit is an archaeologist. So he digs up bones for a living, and Chili works airport security as a fun side haha. They tried to give the dogs like dog jobs. Then he's on the phone like talking about some kind of order for work, and Bingo wants to play, and he just kind of ends up snapping at Bingo. Like, Bingo, please. And that turns into her playing a silly game where they've got fairies, and the fairies are doing little jokes like putting their tail in braids and doing goofy stuff. And it turns out, and they actually kind of get very obvious, like, well, it seems like the fairies may have been made upset by somebody. And Bandit goes, well, how would this somebody make things right with the fairies? And they openly talk about that this is Bingo processing that she got snapped at. And what's great is I kind of love that they focus sometimes on Bingo with some of those episodes because of her being younger than Bluey, and even sometimes Bluey helping her and showing how siblings can help bridge some of those gaps. But yeah, that one was a good one. And it goes back to even talking about, using play to process that budgie episode that we started the first bullet point with. Yeah, so definitely agree that it does a great job of highlighting the power of imaginative play. It's not just about them playing. It's not just about entertainment. Kids process through play. That's why there's this fun thing in psychology called play therapy and or sandbox therapy for those that are really cool in that lingo. And it really is watching them play and kind of unpacking what some of that could mean, or using play to help process things, particularly like in grief counseling for kids, right? Like you're not taking the 10-year-old that's lost their parent and having sit down talk therapy. You're playing, right? So I thought it was cool to kind of show what that can look like in a home.
Exactly.
Play.
Well, how about you dive into point number 6 here?
Point number 6, Bluey avoids overstimulation. Unlike many children's shows that rely on fast-paced editing, flashing colors, and nonstop action, Bluey takes a different approach. Its soft colors, natural dialogue, and moderate pacing create a calm experience that fosters comprehension and emotional engagement. The characters talk using real-life speech patterns, making it easier for kids to absorb language skills and learn to communicate more effectively. I do want to put an asterisk on this for them. That's more for older kids. With your younger kids, they really need that real engagement of a face looking at them and talking to them and seeing how the mouth works. So like your Miss Rachel, your Blippi, all the things that drive all the parents insane that they hate. Unfortunately, there is a period where that's super important for them. But other than that, absolute truthiness to this. This is actually one of those shows that I will play in the background when he won't go down for a nap, because I'm not worried about it being too much, right? Like I know he loves cars, but I can't take him going, oh my God, Lightning's having a car accident right when he's trying to go down for a nap.
Overstimulation is there is too much overstimulation in a lot of kids' entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I think back to shows back when I was a kid, and it was just constant colors, noise, and it is easy to fall into that trap of letting your kid get excited about that type of entertainment. But
right.
But I think there is something to be said about having shows that just have that normal everyday pacing. I mean, look at Mr. Rogers, for instance. That was never like in your face and blah, 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 type of overstimulation. Blue's Clues, very good at not having overstimulation. Sesame Street, for the most part, I think you can argue that maybe the Elmo's world, or whatever they call it, that can be a little goofy at times in terms of the overstimulation. But that visual stimulus can, if it is too much, can actually work them up too.
Right. And to give a little bit of credit to early on, we didn't have the studies, right? Back when some of the loud, colorful first came out, like millennial kiddo myself, right? Granted, I didn't have it as early as some because I was a farm kid, and we watched Nick at Night after we were done choring. We maybe Saturday cartoons, maybe. But other than that, we were just kind of busy with the farm and everything. So my experience is very different from a lot of my millennial counterparts. But to give them some credit where it's due, we didn't have the information back then, and they honestly thought anything that could hold a child's attention like that was good. They thought that because, hey, kid is staring at TV, oh, this is going to help them learn that they can sit and listen at school. Oh, holy shit, was that not the case, right? Like it actually seemed to cause like a lot of issues because teachers can't cut scenes together to keep up with that, right? To keep up with that level of stimulus during a show. You can't do that. So I do like seeing that some of that's backing down, and that shows like Bluey at least provide an opportunity to bring awareness that it's just not necessary and it's not good for your kid necessarily, right? And that being said, if you need to say play Cars in the background so you could get a podcast recorded with your friend, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world to do. Using it strategically because you're making a complicated dinner that you really just don't see where the small hands are going to be able to make it into a craft because you have to get things done in a timely way to make that thing. Yeah, by all means, like use it strategically to keep your home running. But as far as should it be, should the drive-through breakfast burrito be breakfast every day?
Well, it's
Probably not, right? Like the McDonald's, the super processed, like that shouldn't be every day. But hey, if you're like on your way out the door because you have an insanely busy day, is it literally better than nothing so that you can get the shit done for your family? Absolutely. And I think this is where more people, I wish we were just more embracing of that middle path that I feel like I constantly remind folks about that totally exists in things. You don't have to be an always, but you don't have to be a never either.
Well, I think too, I mean, if you think about it, let's take like an action movie, for instance. If an action movie was just all fighting or all explosions or something like that, it lessens the impact of those big moments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need the mellower moments to be, in order for to be there in order for those big moments in those types of films to be effective. Or, you know, what if a roller coaster was just all down or all the twisting or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, the roller coaster needs to start out slow in order for the big moments to have that impact. So, you know, yeah, to your point, utilizing some of that entertainment that can be a little overstimulating at times is not necessarily a bad thing. But if it's all that, then the kid would respond accordingly. And that is not a good thing at that point.
Right. You don't have to never use it. You can use it strategically. But I do love that if you want that safe show that you can put it on and not necessarily go like, all right, well, how many minutes of Captain Underpants have we had this week? Bluey's a good one. And it tends to kind of hold their focus and teach them things and emotional regulation and stuff that I think you're going to like your kids being exposed to.
Indeed. Speaking of that, I think it kind of ties into the last point here. I'll dive
I
into
didn't
that.
even mean to do that. So let's do this.
Yeah, we've been doing this for so long, it just comes natural, you know.
Just a natural flow.
Yes. All right. Bluey brings people together. Fandom isn't just for adults. Kids benefit from it too. Bluey has created a community of fans who find connection through the show. Children mimic Bluey's Australian accent, quote lines from their favorite episodes, and incorporate Bluey-inspired play into their own worlds. Engaging in shared media experiences like this helps kids develop social and emotional skills and can ease feelings of isolation. There's not much difference between a child playing keepy uppy because of Bluey and an adult quoting SNL or referencing a meme. It's how we connect, process the world, and share meaning. Bluey also gives families a shared language. Parents and kids can talk about episodes, reflect on moments that feel familiar, and use the show's lessons in real life. Whether it's a preschooler pretending to be a granny or a parent quoting Bandit's playful wisdom, Bluey has a way of bringing people together. And, you know, as far as Bluey goes, I've definitely seen that in action, not just from you, of course, but from other online sources. I mean, there are definitely plenty of people out there that are fans of Bluey, but in the broader sense, you know, for what they touched upon, you know, people become fans of things. I mean, there's water cooler talk for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, and that is one way that we as adults have been able to connect with other adults and find friends that way. So why not have a healthy outlet out there for kids to be able to do that too?
Exactly. And yes, I know I already mentioned there's adult Bluey groups, which is funny because in frustration of parenting groups, I had actually made one based off of a quote from Bandit where he's making fun of people reacting to Bluey because they do pepper that in. There's this episode where they are building basically an IKEA type thing, their version of IKEA. Chili's like, hey, the cartoon dog says to do this, like, because you know, the little cartoons that show you how to build stuff. And Bandit goes, I'm not taking advice from a cartoon dog. And just straight calling out some of the negative reaction to some of the stuff that's in the show. But yeah, there's like all sorts of good humor out there, but I tried to start a group that says we're not taking advice from cartoon dogs, and it was just I just made it kind of as a vent thing. I'd never really put effort into it to get it like popularity and get people to join. It was just me venting steam. But there's like some good adult groups if you're looking at that. And then, like I said, Hammer Barn, if you come across Hammer Barn, that is going to be a lot of dirty jokes. I appreciate them, but it's not going to be the kid or necessarily the parent friendly. And even the adult group isn't necessarily about parenting. A lot of it are, I feel like more and more news has come out that millennials are speaking up about how we kind of feel like we didn't get parented by our boomer generation parents, right? The baby boomer generation. Sorry if boomers, I don't remember which one that makes them upset. It seems like calling them anything other than their name makes them upset, I guess. But but of that generation that's called the baby boomers, it feels like there's a lot of us that felt like we didn't get parented. And it's interesting to see how many of us end up in groups like that don't have kids, have no interest in having kids, but are using it to heal some of that and even give us those examples that we kind of wish had existed back then. I will give that entire generation this much of a pass. We have to stop treating them like they had access to information like we do. They didn't. Okay. A lot of them really did do, it might not seem that way, their best with the information that they had. But I do think it's really awesome that we do get the opportunity to readdress some of that stuff that's missing now, right? Like we can't go back and suddenly make the internet exist 2 decades before it did. We can't. But we can have some grace and at least recognize that we have tools now that we can work on some of that stuff that we wish we had been taught and shown better, and therefore make us better at either being parents or just better at being emotionally regulated, not being a parent. There's just so much that has brought those groups together. And it's so cool to see the parenting people and the re-parenting people when a good discussion happens in those groups. Because of course, it's the internet. There's always the risk of it turning into a fucking fight, right? But when they're productive conversations, God, those are good ones in that group. That's like one of my favorite places.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I'm still a Gen X kid, but just on that borderline of Gen X and millennial. I was born in '76. Millennials officially started in the '80s, and to your point, yeah, parents in my generation did do their parenting based on the information they had at that particular time. But I think one thing I've learned as being a parent myself as well is also the importance of, once your kids do become older, having the humbleness to apologize to them for the times that you did screw up as a parent, because my parents didn't really do that. Now, my mother, by the time she got to the point to where she was opening up, that's when she was dealing with her brain tumor. So I can kind of give her a pass. Yeah. But my dad, different story altogether. Like he would still probably think he was a great parent, even though he was far from one. And I think, like for me, I don't want to give my kids that type of experience now that they are, on the adult side. And it is important for parents, to apologize to their kids, especially the older they get, for mistakes you make as a parent. Because again, for, what we talked about before, you're not going to be a perfect parent. You're going to make mistakes. Some mistakes are, some parents will make minor mistakes to where you don't really have to apologize. Some parents may have to deal with their kids not really wanting to talk to them. And you have to accept that. You can't be the type of person that's going to go on an online forum like, why don't my kids talk to me? You were a jerk, Patty,
Yeah, I love that I can actually say, because you sucked, Karen. Like, but yeah, it's just like, I don't get the psychology there of just the inability to just talk about it. Because I know I've gone to both of mine individually in the own timelines and ways, and have offered essentially the same thing to both of them. To one, I actually put in letter format because we just kept fighting, and I just wanted it to stop. It's like, if you want to be in my life, here's how I think we can move forward. We can either, I legit, because you know me when I write something, Tim, it was very clear and probably proofread by a couple of my friends most likely
Yeah.
Wendy, because I know she's been on the show, and by you probably. But I very specifically said, we can either talk about it or reset button. Now, did I like the reset button idea? No. But I wanted to give something to make it break. So that was like and I feel like a lot of people will not do the reset button. A lot of us millennials are really upset. And I'm not saying that I'm like better or that this is right. I'm admitting I didn't want the reset button. I wanted a conversation. But I love that I sent that letter and like got nothing back ever. No, not even an acknowledgement.
Oh boy.
So, I mean, and I think that kind of speaks to the generation in itself, I guess. Like maybe there's just something there with that it's just, we don't talk about it because talking about it just makes me feel worse about it. And it's like, well, but we're not seeing how it can be healing and make the other person feel a bit better. But at least there's ways now, kind of circling back to that reparenting, that maybe some of us can soothe and move on without relying on that other part of the equation to be willing to come to us to have the conversations we want to have. Like we can almost use Bandit and Chili to be like, hey, I messed up. And it's like, thanks, Mom. You know, it's so nice to see somebody say, my emotions were valid, my actions were not, you know, because that's like a really good saying out there, by the way, is you're allowed to have your emotions. Your emotions are always valid. But the way you act after having or while experiencing those emotions are not always valid. And that's where, as a parent, I do think it's super important to show that to your kids because you're going to fuck up. You just are. We're not perfect. We have days where we're overstimulated. There's actually one episode I realized they didn't bring up, I don't think, where Bandit walks in and it shows Chili in the kitchen and Bluey keeps tooting as loud as she can on this recorder. And Bingo's just being Bingo and saying her version of a joke, which makes no sense because there's that age where they're trying to experiment with joking. And Chili's got the bags under her eyes. And she's just, you could tell she's like about to have a moment. Bandit walks in and she goes, something's in the microwave, breakfast is da-da-da. I need 20 minutes where nobody talks to me. And like the kids don't know how to take that. But they did end up talking about it after. That it wasn't that she didn't want to be with them. And so it goes back to that. You can have those moments, but don't rob your kids of explaining it because you think they won't get it. Because I guarantee you they understand way more than we give them credit for. And it starts with normalizing the conversations even before they understand it. Because guess what? It's always a part of it then. It's always been a part of raising them. And so when they do start to understand it, it's not like, hey, this never happened before. Why the hell are we having this deep conversation over the fact that I spilled my sippy cup or whatever, right? Like it's always been part of it. And so it even normalizes some of that, like, you don't have to be perfect.
Damn right. Well, good article here. Any other points on Bluey you wanted to say to our friends at home?
Watch it. Do not start with the sign or it won't make sense. There's a lot of people that, hey, they made a movie. First of all, it's not a movie. It was a 30-minute extended episode. There is a movie, though, that's coming out in 2027. I'm super curious what the next season's going to be because anybody who follows this knows that the original creator is bowing out and Disney's taking over. So there's a lot of us that are nervous. But we can at least vouch for these first initial, 3 seasons, I think, technically. Because I had 1 and 2 and then 3 came out. So the first 3 seasons do involve the original writer. Definitely get all over those. He is involved in the movie coming out in 2027. Get in on that. Don't start boycotting it over news that just broke recently that has had literally no effect on any of the content that's out so far. All we're getting is more Bluey toys right now. That's the only real change I've seen is Bluey freaking everything.
Yeah, you got to market. But
yeah, but it's such a good show. Give it a shot.
Indeed. Well, I know before we wrap things up here, I think I've told you a little bit about my job before, where I work at, but I don't think I've talked about some of the dogs that I work with before, have I?
No, not really.
Yes. I work at a doggy daycare, and it's one hell of a job. Let me tell you that. I never thought I would actually like a job. I've had so many jobs before that paid the bills, but were absolute shite. So working with animals has definitely been an amazing experience. But some of the things you do and say while caring for these dogs, like there's this brother and sister dog that is there, and they will start playing, but then out of nowhere, you will have to turn to the dog and go, "Hey, don't lick your sister's butthole." You have to say stuff like that. There's tons of mounting going on. The dogs in question that are there, once they reach 9 months, they have to either be spayed or neutered to continue being there. So 99% of the dogs that are there, there's no worry about them, making babies,
Right.
or anything like that. But that does not stop them from mounting. There have been 3 ways. That's been interesting. There's been plenty of face fucking that I've seen. There's one that he will. I compare him to like a 60-year-old businessman visiting a prostitute in Malaysia. Like, he will sniff another dog's butt, and he will not try and get on top of the other dog and start the mounting, but he'll start just gyrating his hips while he's sniffing the butt. It's like,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Well, and what's funny is anybody that knows anything about animal behavior, humping is going to happen no matter what. That's actually a dominance thing more than it is anything to do with breeding half the time, especially when they go for the face. Dogs aren't that dumb. It really is a dominance move. But yeah, I can imagine. But what's funny is, you say things that you never thought you'd say, but it sounds oddly similar to some of the stuff like I've had to say, like, "Hey, don't put your finger in your butt." Like, and I get it. Oh my God, my poor Google feed is like, "Is this normal?" And it's like, yeah, it's all normal. Like, they're exploring everything right now. Definitely going through the overly amused with his penis phase.
Look what this can do.
Oh no, like any opportunity to ditch a diaper and just like wiggle his hips so he could feel it move. He's all about that right now. And it's like, that's such like, yep, toddler boy, because I'm in some toddler boy groups. And I'm like, yeah, that is definitely the shared experience.
Has he
Enjoying
done the helicopter yet?
No, but he does love a good air drying session. And that is when he will allow me to put a shirt on him after his bath, but no pants, because he just wants to book it through the house.
And Donald Duck it, yeah.
Straight Porky Pig in it, running a marathon. Just so it's kind of funny how some of this reminds me of toddler raising. But yeah, dogs doing dominance, toddlers just experiencing their body.
Yeah. I mean, the dogs are definitely fun. There's also one too who loves to romance first before he will start mounting. He'll like go up to a dog, and you can almost like interpret his thoughts, into words like, "Oh my God, hi, how you doing? Wow, look at that fur. Oh my goodness, you eat the right type of kibble, don't you? Like, do you mind? I'm just gonna get over here. Yeah."
Well, maybe he's looking for consent first.
Compared to some of the other dogs, yeah, like
he's a gentleman. He's a gentleman. He's normalizing.
Yeah, there you go. Just a Lothario type of deal. More smoother than me at times, but it's been one hell of a great experience. I know that much. So definitely enjoy working there. I mean, who knows how long the experience will be, but I'm glad I found that job.
Good. It's been nice to see you enjoying a job and giving a shit about a job.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling. Generally speaking, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, I don't have that dread like I did going into Apple near the end of that time there. Oof.
Yeah, because I know, speaking of jobs, I know we don't talk too much about the Mr. Reverend and what he does. I don't think it's come up on the show, but I'll go ahead and do the big reveal. He was one of them federal workers that suddenly got their buttholes the size of a pin needle with the new administration. And he did decide to take the second offering of the deferred resignation program. And I'm very happy to report that they are still paying. So that's good, because me being we joke that I'm the CFO of the house because I handle all the bills, and there's like a spreadsheet that I use, and blah, blah. And, there's a little bit of me that was concerned, but they seem to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And yeah, it's an interesting time. honestly, because I know when I had told Tim the nerd about it, it was like, oh yeah, I'll be able to record and da da da. And I'm like, no, I've actually just kind of enjoyed having my partner around. And granted, there's also been some stuff that's happened that very innocently, derailed the recording schedule last week. So this Bluey thing taking so long to finally happen is a little bit my bad, a little bit just life. But it's been super nice having him around, because I know something that really stung was when he took the job. It was right when the baby Reverend was being born. And so he did not get any paternity leave. He got to use some sick leave for like a week to make sure I was okay. But they decided it just wasn't going to, like, yeah. Without going too far into intimate details, we felt like he
Yeah.
should have had it. They said no. And there is further background that backs up why he should have had it. And what's funny is they have updated their policy, and you can't make this shit up. They announced it like a month before the baby Reverend turned 1. That basically, hey, my partner, the Mr. Reverend, would, under this world, have had paternity leave. And so he did try to reach out, and they didn't answer him. And because the baby Reverend was already 1, that's all you have is that first year. For those that didn't know that, you have like until the kiddo turns 1 basically to use your leave. That's how it works for most places, because the United States has the best maternity paternity situation in the world. Not ours sucks compared to other areas, but that's what we've got here. So yep, just the clock ran out. And thank you, Tim, for the patience. I know we've talked a lot about my resurgence and return and what that might look like over time, but we sure have been looking on the bright side and enjoying some reconnection time, especially just with the stressful times. But that being said, I love that the Mr. Reverend got to trot off and go hang out with a friend today. Granted, he's taking some food to him because he broke his knee. I didn't even know you could break your knee, but that's a thing.
Oh, one of the dogs sprained my knee last
Ooh,
October.
okay.
Yeah, I call him Bull and Ball. He,
Aptly named.
yeah, he's like almost like 100 pounds and whatnot, just full of energy, loves me to death, but also won't listen to me worth shit, because he loves
Natural.
me. Like I'm Mr. Fun Guy to him. But at one point he was on the other side of the room, ran at me at full speed, and I just stood there thinking he was going to stop. Nope.
Nope.
He ran into me, knocked me on the ground. My left knee hit concrete, and
Oof.
immediately I knew something was wrong. And I stood up. I couldn't even bend my knee. I had to keep my knee straight out. And, once I'm lying on the ground, my glasses on the ground, he's like down by my face at that point, like, what you doing, mister? So yeah, that was him. But going back to the job situation there, like it's fortunate that they're actually honoring their word in terms of paying for the resignation. And I know for the skills that the Mr. Reverend has, like I have no doubt that he's going to be able to find something soon. It's not.
Oh,
He doesn't
yeah.
have my skills. Let's put it that way.
Well, a lot of this, for those that are wondering how this makes sense, like, why are they going to pay it, right? From the party that doesn't like to give money, especially if they feel like it's going to nothing, is because it's honestly cheaper. It is honestly cheaper to do this than deal with the repercussions of like a job market where people can't get work and unemployment filings and stuff like that. And then it's also cheaper for people to voluntarily go out than them try to make a case for firing people, right? So basically, it's the cheap way out, and it allows people the argument of, well, if they really have to move, this is more than enough resource and time for them to find a job and move.
Yeah.
So it does really make sense. I know a lot of people, especially like I know my cousin and I have gone a little bit back and forth. I would say she's more on the further left or Democratic side than say I am. And I know we've had some really interesting conversations about it. It's like, no, really, from a business standpoint, which that's how a lot of conservatives look at stuff like this makes sense. It does kind of make sense because and granted, I know a bunch of us are like at the edge of our seat seeing what the job market is going to look like now. But this one at least made sense, but fortunately it looks like we hopefully won't have to move. But there's opportunities that are remote that we're hoping will work out too. So we'll just see where we end up is kind of where we're at with it. It's an interesting time, but I feel oddly okay with it all so far. So
Yeah, and we can thank Joe Biden for putting us in this particular situation here.
oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You and I have both been open on the show, especially in the past, that we were not enthused about Biden running again. I mean, we
Right.
both made it clear that if it was Biden versus Trump again, we knew who we were going to vote for regardless. But we both had major concerns about his age, and it turns out rightly so.
Right. Yeah, there's some books that have come out. Now, granted, of course, with each book that's come out, there seems to be at least one or two people saying that's not how it was. But it makes sense, especially when you consider the very serious diagnosis that has come out publicly regarding cancer. And yeah, a lot of us were really upset when he announced that he was running again, and not because of this. Right? Like, I don't know. I don't follow politics enough to be like, oh, yeah, they were really shielding him from the public. Oh, yeah, why isn't he talking as much? I wasn't there. However, I don't think running for president when you're older than the current retirement age, that was what I didn't want. And then we all know how that played out, right? Because Americans don't like being told who their candidate is. It doesn't matter what color your lapel pin is. We don't like it. And there's a lot of political analysis people that have come out and said that's basically what happened, because that's what people kind of felt the thing was with Hillary too. Nobody really felt like they honestly picked Hillary when that happened. They felt like they were just voluntold that she was going to end up being the candidate, right?
Which is what happened. I mean,
And then they didn't vote for her, right? So we watched that play out again because I feel like we're so desperate to get our token female leader because like we're the only one that hasn't had one yet. And the Democrats are like seeming more, because right, they've put up two now. They've put up a solid two. The closest, right, we had a female VP, one female VP on the red side, on the Republican side, right? So
nope.
yeah, and
Kamala
I just think
Harris.
they're so desperate for it that they're picking the one. Well, Hillary was better on paper, IMHO, than Harris. They're trying, but like nobody likes to be put in that position. So it just goes back into, I'm not surprised. I'm really not, because we didn't even really want to vote for him the first time. A lot of us, I felt, a lot of us wanted a younger candidate with new ideas. But it's like that the kind of the people who are critical of the Democratic Party is like they're their own worst enemy in this respect, because they're trying to mush all the like buttons, but you can't do that. You can't order a pizza that everybody's going to love. You got to stick to the pizza that you want to serve and see who takes a slice. And I think that has been the best analogy I have heard, is you can't order a pizza for millions of people and expect to find something that everybody likes. Right?
Yeah.
But anywho.
Now to be clear, like I don't get the impression that like Biden was like a complete invalid and whatnot. But I do think if you want the job of president, you have to be physically able to take those 2:00, 3:00 in the morning phone calls to be able to do the job. And from all the accounts that are out there, he was not able to do that. And he had his team kind of hiding that, and also too trying to play it completely safe. And Kamala Harris, when she was running, her people were trying to play it safe as well, trying to make sure that her media appearances were only in quote unquote approved settings, to where she wouldn't say the wrong thing or whatnot. And yeah, just, this was a winnable election. We did not have to go back to what we currently have in the Oval Office again, but the Democrats did every single thing wrong to get us back to this point, and they lost a lot of trust with a lot of people. And you have some people that are out there that are saying, why are we talking about Biden when we have what's going on in the White House? Because Trump is definitely showing signs of mental degrading. He's shown that for years now. But I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think if we don't want Trump in office, but that's fine, but we should still demand that the people that we support are supportable. And Biden wasn't.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, it's possible that she could have been if she had a primary and fought through that primary and came out as the chosen candidate, but
But
she
she
was only
didn't.
given a little over 100 days.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point, we were told this is who you're going to vote for. You will now like her.
And that's what they should. Okay, so what they should have done, right, was him never run and instead support her running. I think that could have been a totally different world, and I think more people would have voted for her. I think it goes back to being voluntold. And then the other thing is, I think it's funny that we've just finished this conversation about, how much it hurts the child dynamic. And I'm not saying politicians are our daddies and we're the children, but that dynamic of acting like your shit doesn't stink, not being able to own mistakes, it does breed mistrust, no matter what the relationship is. Parent to child, it breeds mistrust when you can't say, I could have done this better, or I'm going to learn from this. And it's like they just won't learn from it, because a lot of people felt like they did kind of the same thing as 2016 when it came to Harris. Once it switched over, right? Because obviously, they didn't run with somebody else first and say, actually, this person's the only one that can get all the campaign money. Because that's what's stupid, is they didn't even have a choice at that point. They backed themselves into a corner. They didn't even technically get to pick their candidate. Right? Because
thanks to Biden. Thanks to Biden.
Because he never should have rerun.
Yeah,
so to me, it's it's nice that these stories have come out. I'm not going to pretend to be surprised, because so many of us were worried about his age. And then when you consider the diagnosis, which, how long has he been feeling bad? Right. Now he's got a cancer that one of the things that came out about it is that it would explain some of the mental degradation that we felt we were experiencing when we did see him. Now, the odds of these books coming out right alongside of coming public with that diagnosis, that even has my tinfoil hat going of, when was he diagnosed? When was he really diagnosed? But I'm openly saying that's tinfoil hat shit right there, guys. Please don't sit there and be like, oh, he's had it for years. No, I'm just saying my tinfoil hat goes, how long has this been going on then?
My understanding is this, I believe after the age of 70, doctors will stop testing for the types of cancer that Biden has, just because of the fact that with how long that type of cancer can grow in a system, by the time it could really be a problem, the person's generally dead anyway, due to other reasons. But we're also talking about the president of the United States. Yeah. We're not talking about just some average guy. My understanding, there is a podcast I listen to called Politics, with Justin Robert Long, and he mentioned that in 2021, it was publicly disclosed that Biden did have a biopsy. I believe he had a colon cancer. So, he did have a biopsy of the colon in 2021. So, again, not going the tinfoil hat route, because I don't have all the information. So I'm not going to say he definitively had it beforehand. But to your point, some of the symptoms that they talked about do involve cognitive decline. And, at that point, it's like there needs to be in place some strict physical requirements for the people that take the job as president of the United States. And if they are not able to live up to that standard, then they should not be in office. There have been too many examples in the past from both parties, going back through the years, whether it be like Ronald Reagan, whether it be John F. Kennedy, Woodrow Wilson, I believe, was completely invalid at one point, thanks to a stroke that he had, and his wife was running things, but they never let that information out. And that, I'm sorry, that is wrong.
Right. And it's I do wonder if this is going to ultimately turn into that conversation of, we have an age minimum. I do believe there should be an age maximum. And that age should not be reached at any point while you're in office. And I know there's people who's like, but Reverend Tracy, but Reverend T, isn't that ageist? This is where you can't win, I think. But see, it makes sense. But if you think about like some of the heart behind, the reason for only 2 terms, we're talking about reducing the likelihood of somebody dying in office because of how catastrophic that can be on our system. That's all. You want to base that off of some kind of cognitive and physical testing? Do you want to base it on just an age? I don't care, but I think this points out that this needs to be fixed.
Yes, rightly so. Would I be upset if they had a maximum age you can be president? No, but at very minimum, there needs to be in place, like, basically the presidential doctors need to have the power to say, you are not fit to do this job, and then, go on from there at that point, regardless of who's in office. And I think Democrats should not fall into the trap that, some Republicans have done with who is currently in office, because that person is not mentally well. And, the people that support him don't want to see it. And yet we have plenty of people on our side of the fence here that are kind of saying the same thing about Biden. And it's like, you can't talk about people that support Trump doing X, Y, and Z actions and then do the same thing yourself. If we really, truly want to get past this type of stuff and have somebody in office, regardless of whether we voted for them or not, who is cognitively and physically able to do the job, then we need to fight for that.
Yeah. I think that's even something hopefully both sides can agree on by the end of this, because my joke, and to clarify, this is a joke, is that people worried about the current president being in there for more than 4 years. But I'm like, but doesn't he believe like working out depletes some imaginary body battery? Like, that could be fake. I get it. I don't really research. I just don't want my Google. Like, I get that I could look these things up and verify them, but I have to go with, do I, this being on my Google algorithm, care about this question? Right? And like, to me, it's unfortunate that like I could see him believing that, because he does not look like he works out. He does not look like he's fit. It seems like he wants to believe that he could be like a Putin level, but the problem is Putin's been in since he was young and in shape, and has actually invested a lot in his physical well-being. Right?
And yet Trump with the McDonald's, and that's another thing too. If we remember back during his first term, when he had a physical and they said he was 215 pounds. No, he wasn't.
No. It's like that line from Liar, Liar. Yeah, in your bra. Like, oh, man. I don't know. On that note, should we wrap it up? I don't want to loom too political for too long. And the Tiny Sir has definitely brought a stinky situation back here to me now. So I think he is demanding my attention.
All right. Well, I'll let you clean up that mess there, but let's wrap things up. Each Monday, we'll have something in this podcast space, not the baby Reverend's diapers, to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Can you say bye-bye, friends?
Bye-bye, friends. We did it. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.